16, Legge. And it's Sunday night of the Super Bowl 2018. I don't even know if I am legally allowed to say Super Bowl, but whatever. And we're going to go just for a little bit here because for this audience, more importantly, it is a couple of days before signing day. The second signing day, I don't even know what we're calling it anymore. So Georgia hoping to pick up the last few guys on their wish list. Let me try to turn this down just a little bit. I can. It appears that this is too loud. Am I wrong? Can folks tell me if it's too loud on Twitter? I'm watching the Super Bowl, but I mean, y'all are on here right now yourselves, so uh, let's just see. Is it too loud? Let's see. Volume is good. All right. Well, if the volume's good, don't be mean to me. Okay. Well, I might have the mic a little too close to me anyway, but we're trying to get as good a we're trying to get as good a sound as possible so that we can put this on the podcast and let people listen to it on their ride to work or from work or to whatever it is that you do. I mean, if you're going to the grocery store, hopefully you live close enough. It's about 9 o'clock here in Georgia, and this week's a big week, no question. We are 3 days from signing day. You're looking at Tyson Campbell, Rick Sandidge, Caleb Johnson. There's just a slew of kids that Georgia's sort of figuring out what's going on. I would say right this second um, that it seems to me like the person that is the most likely to sign with Georgia who is not committed is Tyson Campbell. That's what it feels like. I think that a lot of us who cover recruiting, and some people cover it more heavily than I do, like Matt DeBerry, I think there is some acknowledgement, at least, that there's some sort of movement, perhaps with Otis Reese, and we'll just see what happens there. I think Georgia has done; they are as in good a position as they could possibly be in for the last two in-state defenders. And with Otis Reese, he's been committed to Michigan forever. With Walker from Crisp County, he's been committed elsewhere forever. I would say it feels right now like Reese is more likely than Walker. But with that said, I think the understanding has got to be that we are a couple of days from signing day. It's Sunday. This time, um, going into December, it was hard to know for sure what was happening with Cade Mays. I mean, you could tell it was moving towards Georgia, but you weren't certain. So with Cade Mays, that really broke towards Georgia on Monday. I mean, I feel like I'm trying to remember. I feel like we knew on Monday for sure that that was what was going on. If you've got questions about specific kids, I'll do my best to answer it. Rick Sandidge, we believe, is and have believed for some time now that he is more likely headed to South Carolina than anywhere else, just based on some conversations with people who talked with him. That is that's great for him. I think that means to me, and maybe someone else would know better, but that means to me that the two defensive linemen who are committed to Georgia, Walthour and Davis, are pretty certainly going to wind up signing with Georgia. Again, the big caveat here is that I don't know everything, period. So please don't take it as I this is 100% gospel. And then at the same time, things can change the last 48 hours. But it's not so much that they change; it's so much that we figure out what's going on. Now, someone's asking here about Tyson Campbell's other choice. He visited Miami this weekend, but my understanding is that this is a Georgia-Alabama thing more than anything else. And that will mean that I think Georgia's in. Well, I mean, they're gonna have to fight till the end, but I don't know. Hello from Plano, Texas. Hello from Athens, Georgia. I hope that you're doing well. Someone said to do this during the Super Bowl halftime from now on. Maybe that's a good idea, but our family gets together and watches the Super Bowl halftime. I wish it was Sponsored by someone other than Pepsi. A different signing day for sure. There's no question. I think that's the one thing that's so different. So different for those of us who've covered this for, this is my 18th year of covering Georgia, and this is a different feel. In years gone by, you would have a pretty good understanding of the situation rolling into signing day. And of course, there was only one signing day. Now I think more than anything, I think we have a pretty good grasp of what's likely to happen. Do we know 100% when we're 72 hours out? I think that's hard to know for sure. Okay, someone's asking right now, who do I think that Georgia will close with? I'm going to go over this at Dog Post a little bit further in detail, probably Monday night. But I think that if, you know, my guess is that the two kids who are committed will likely sign with Georgia. I think Tyson Campbell will likely sign with Georgia. The receivers have become a little bit confusing, I guess you could say. But right now, Matt DeBerry thinks that Bush probably signs with Georgia. We'll see. And as it relates to Quay Walker and Otis Reese, we are in the boat that Reese is more likely than Walker. I got to say, again, that I think that Georgia did all it could do and has done all it could do with both those guys. I think they positioned themselves about as well as they could to get Walker, and we'll just see what happens. Campbell and Surtain, someone was talking about just now packaging up and going to Alabama. I'm not aware of. I'll put it to you this way: me flying to Miami tomorrow would be less likely if I felt like Alabama was going to sign Tyson Campbell. So we'll just see. There's a lot of kids in Miami that I need to catch up with anyway. But someone was asking a second ago about Rick Sandidge. What percentage? I mean, to me, that he will go to South Carolina, I think it's a significant percentage. I don't know exactly what it is, but much higher than 50% that he goes to South Carolina. I think, I don't know necessarily what happened there, but I think it's just one of these things where Georgia's comfortable going into these final days. I think they're going to sign 4 or 5 guys. They could sign 6. I kind of doubt that. And we'll just see. It is confusing because this time of year, you really have to trust yourself as much as you can. Being that I cover recruiting not on an every single day basis, but on a pretty close basis. I don't know every single thing about every single kid, but I think it's pretty relevant, evident where Georgia's going here right at the end. Someone just asked about Tommy Bush. These are always recorded. You can go watch them on Twitter. You can watch them on YouTube. You can watch them or listen to them on iTunes or SoundCloud or on Dog Post. I mean, we have every single way to listen to it. So if you don't catch what I say at the live, that's pretty normal. I mean, only about anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people watch these live. So go back and watch them or listen to them on a tape delay. Do we even call it that anymore? I guess not. Are you concerned about the defensive line? What would you consider a success on Tuesday? Well, for me, it would be running down some of the kids I got to find in Miami. If you mean Wednesday on signing day, just poking fun. I mean, I think that if you're Georgia and you maintain the number 1 class in the country, you got to be pretty happy already with what you've got. They will add multiple kids, and because of that, they will likely end number 1, you would think. If this is not the number 1 class in the country, and if they wind up with 11 kids in the top 100 and they're not the number 1 class, that's confusing to me because that's 10% of every kid in the top 100, 11% in some cases. What holes do you think Georgia has to fill in this class? Well, the defensive line is certainly an issue. They had to sign a quarterback, and they went out and signed the number 2 quarterback in the country, so that checks that box. Needed a running back, got 2. So I think at this second, it's defensive line because as much as I am a big fan of Devontae Wyatt, the other two guys coming in with him right now, well, first of all, they're true freshmen, and secondly, they got a little ways to go in terms of development. So that is an issue. I think that the class that they signed on the defensive line in 2016, sorry about that. I just kicked it with my foot. Um, sorry about that. But that 16 class gave them some stability for a while, and then now you're kind of looking around, going, hey, they need to get where they got to go on the defensive line pretty quick. I mean, Trent's gone. They still got some guys, and there's the kid Upson Lee is very good in the 2019 class, but I think it's important this class to make sure that you've got what you need there on the defensive line. Do you see the staff developing guys better than the former staff? They definitely are on the offensive line. I don't think there's any question about that. As it relates to the quarterbacks, I mean, I think once Mike Bobo left, there's really not been anybody better at developing talent than him. Once he left, things changed. Someone's asking about D'Angelo Gibbs. I'm not going to talk about what we reported on the porch. That's something that subscribers got. I don't know if anybody else has reported that or not, but there's a tidbit about D'Angelo. Go ahead and log on to Dog Post. It's a good chance for you to take advantage of that service. We had that Friday night. If Dog Post subscribers are on here, maybe they can help me when we broke that story. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, the Walker kid. If I'm not getting confused with a bunch of names, the kid at Upson Lee is an important player for them next year, and it seems to be like that's going to be a fight between Georgia and Clemson. So we'll just see how that goes. Yeah, that was Friday. This I'll tell you right now. You can tell. I mean, I've not been shaving. I've been doing a lot of stuff, getting ready for Miami and signing day. Let's see. I I will be in Miami, which is not. I mean, it's the first time I won't be in Athens. Um, I can't remember the last time I went in Athens for signing day. Someone's asking for the next pledge, 2019, the tight end from Northwest Atlanta will be the next guy. I think Ryan Rylan is not tomorrow. My understanding is that he's Wednesday, so I think Georgia's in really good shape there. If I have to say so myself. Any word on who Georgia will hire for the two vacant coaching positions? That would be something covered on Dog Post typically, but I have to say I think that's not going to happen until a couple more days. It won't be during signing day. I think some things are shaking out. I asked a fair amount of friends of mine in the coaching industry why schools hadn't yet started filling in that spot, and I think globally on the collegiate level, they don't really feel rushed to do it. So no reason to. So I don't know the answer to that yet. I think Georgia knew that. I mean, obviously they knew that Coach Shearer would leave, but I don't think that they anticipated that that Shane Beamer would go. So that was a little bit interesting in terms of timing. That's all. Really got to get my space here cleaned up the way it should be. Y'all can't see it, but I'm a little bit of a wreck right now in this space. Further questions? I've got my friends over here texting me that I'm lame for doing this, but I don't think it's lame to do your job. I will say that. I think this is part of the during the holidays. I think it's one thing to miss Sunday nights, but not during the season, and certainly not a couple days before signing day. Will 2019 be better than 2018 in terms of recruiting? I'm assuming you're asking. It shaped up to be for sure better before the December signing period. It is hard to say that Georgia will be better in 19. I mean, it was hard to say that 18 would be better than 17. That 17 class was the greatest of all time at Georgia. And 18 has become one of the best recruiting classes in modern recruiting history. So there's not been many that are better than this current class that Kirby and them have put together. That's my skepticism about Ohio State being number one. I mean, come on. I don't know about that, but 19 has the ability to be extremely special in state for Georgia. I mean, you've got two game changing wide receivers um, with Hazelton and excuse me, Hazelton. I'm getting the kid at Cedar Grove's last name. I'm butchering it. I'm sorry. And you got Blaylock at Walton. You will not have a class in terms of the backfield skill position like you do right now, which is with Cook, Zamir, and then Justin Fields. I mean, you're not going to sign a class like that for the backfield. So, and it's going to be tough to sign an offensive line class like they just did. So, it is December 1st. I thought for sure 17 and 19 would be better than 18. But I mean, looking back on it, how can you really, how can you say that 18 I mean, 19 could be better? I don't know. This person's saying that I don't know anything. Well, then get off the chat. No big deal. You know what? We'll just go ahead and block you. Congratulations. What a waste of time. Do I know why Jordan Harris was suspended? I thought you might be less busy with fewer kids to chase. Well, that's true. There were fewer kids to chase in this particular cycle, but that doesn't mean that it makes it any less. Doesn't make it any less complicated because two of them, Reese and Walker, are nearly impossible to understand what's going on there because they're just not talking. But I think Georgia has done all it could possibly do with Walker, and I mean, Reese has been more receptive through time, I guess you could say. But I think they've done all they can do with those two guys, and that's all there is to it. As it relates, I think someone was asking about Mark Fox. I'm not sure. Look, I've talked a lot about Mark Fox this weekend. I mean, y'all can go read on Dog Post what I write about basketball. It's almost always free. This is not a tournament team right now. It's we're barreling towards a decision that needs to be made, and not making a decision is a decision as well. So Georgia's agreement with Mark Fox changes significantly after April 1st. The buyout for him is $1.1 million at that stage. Right now, it'd be a little bit more than that. There's 2 years left in the contract after April 1st. So there's got to be a decision that's made. Is Mark Fox going to be your coach of the future or not? And I would say it's probably time for a change. Dylan Weber was at some serious five-star kids basketball game the other night. He said it was as impressive a kid as he's seen. So, but you can't make a decision by one, recruit. I mean, that would still have you with Mark Richt and Jacob Eason at Georgia. And I don't think anybody wanted Mark Richt to stick around just to keep Jacob Eason. And as it turns out, Jacob went to Georgia anyway. And as it turned out after that, he got injured and he wasn't the starting quarterback the second season. You can't ever know. A lot of discussion about Jonas Hayes. Look, I'm not aware that Jonas Hayes is out campaigning for this job. In fact, that would be stunning to me. I think he understands. From what I understand about Jonas Hayes, I find it very hard to believe that he would do that to the person that he is, who brought him into Division I college coaching. In terms of letting Mark Fox go and then move on from there, that's a different discussion. I mean, Phil Pearson was the interim head coach at Alabama when Mike Godfrey got fired. I don't know, but Pearson is not the future of basketball at Georgia as far as the head basketball coach is concerned. I mean, Jonas Hayes could be the head basketball coach at Georgia, or he probably will be a head coach somewhere someday, probably sooner than later, if I had to guess from what I hear in the industry. But he's not a head coach right now, and it's hard to know how good someone will be until they're in that position. Can Georgia get a good coach with experience to replace Fox? Not sure a new guy would feel good. Not sure what you mean by the last sentence there. And sometimes we get lost in communication when we're not visually seeing one another eye to eye when we kind of communicate text based. But um, I think if you're talking about Georgia, an institution that's paid its head coach $2 million a year for the last however many years, and there's been very little in the way of results, I think a lot of coaches would be eager to explore the position that Georgia's in, considering the amount of talent, not necessarily in the state, but in Gwinnett County exclusively. I mean, I grew up in DeKalb County, and I love DeKalb County. I could kind of do without Gwinnett County in our youth, but there's no question that East Atlanta has a ton of talent, and Gwinnett County has more than its fair share. So there's plenty of skill to be had if you are interested in being the head coach at Georgia, and you're seeing that now. I mean, Georgia got a 5-star kid committed to him, 4-star kid committed to him. There's plenty of kids out there, but it's looking like you're running out of time if you're Mark Fox. Greg McGarity looks bad because he held on to Mark Fox too long. Well, a lot of Greg's critics would say there's plenty of other reasons why Greg looks bad, but that's for them to talk about. And I think in my view, with Greg, sometimes the criticisms are just to throw stones at the guy. I think that we've gotten to that point where Greg has done some things well, but I think there's plenty of things to criticize. And whenever you are the athletic director at a place like Georgia or wherever, I mean, you're going to get criticized. And, he did not handle the firing of Mark Richt very well. I thought that was poor. But at the end of the day, he hired Kirby. Whether he really wanted to hire Kirby or not, nobody seems to. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just become fashionable to basically shit all over Greg McGarity, and I think that's fine if there's a reason to do that. But I think often people just don't really want to give him any credit. And someone's saying here Greg wanted someone else besides Kirby. That was my understanding, but that could just be hearsay. I know that he wanted someone other than Mark Richt, and that the way he got there was not the smoothest on earth. But maybe the lesson learned. I don't know, but they're gonna have to make a decision about Mark Fox. They're gonna have to make a decision about Scott Strickland. There are some decisions that have to be made, and again, Greg. If you want to criticize Greg, I think that's completely fair. But I think to some degree, it's just piling on. I see stuff written in the Atlanta paper, and sometimes it just seems, frankly, ridiculous. But that's their outlet, and this is mine, so they can do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it. I mean, no one is above criticism in my book. All of us can be criticized, but just to jab somebody for kind of no reason, I don't know. Kirby's for the taking. Kirby had plenty of support internally, and Kirby had plenty of support internally for some time. I mean, this is not a new thing. This was not a new thing in 2016. I mean, he very much was on the radar of people in the know. He was a little young. I mean, he's a little older than I am. To say he should have been the guy in 2010 or 11, I don't think that would have happened. I don't know. Maybe he'd have been 35 years old, or what would he have been? Not even younger than that. So that's a young head coach. Lincoln Riley proved that you could do that and be successful, win the conference, get the playoff. But Lincoln Riley was kind of shoved onto Oklahoma. Had Mark gotten fired after the 10 or 11 season, I mean, the legend that Kirby had become in the coaching world would not have been as big. And I don't know what would have happened then. That's a good question too. That's a good question too. And quite frankly, had Georgia won the national championship in 2012, which they were moments away from, would Mike Bobo have gotten a bigger look? I think Mike was too loyal a girlfriend for too long at Georgia. I'm glad he left. That was the right move for Mike, and I think that it was the right move for his family. And every book does not have a romantic ending. That's for sure. Would Georgia have? Let's see. Would UGA have Kirby today if South Carolina didn't go? Didn't. So I think you're saying, would Georgia have gotten Kirby had South Carolina not sort of pursued him after Spurrier left? Well, I think it was I think it was clear that Steve Spurrier was leaving South Carolina midway through the season, right? That also coincided with Georgia's collapse. So while they may not be mutually exclusive, I'm not necessarily sure they're related, but they were not in a vacuum, and they were. Georgia was not going to let him go to South Carolina or Tennessee, particularly after they had decided that they were going to let Mark go. How do how do I get one of those mugs? They gave those to us at the national championship thing. I don't know. Was the cinch cone for AD movement taken seriously inside Georgia? I'm not sure which stench comb you're talking about. Um, I would take the stench combs plural very seriously, and I think people who don't are dumbasses. You're talking about two of the smartest people that I've met. I know we grew up not so far from one another, and you know, and where we both grew up. They went to Parkview, went to Tucker. Uh, you know, John is on the athletic board, so I think it would be against. It would be what's the word? Nepotism for him to conflict of interest, nepotism, whatever you want to call it, for him to push his brother. I'm not aware that that's happened. Um, Georgia could do a lot worse than one of those two guys running the athletic department. I mean, you're talking about some very smart guys with a background in some cases in finance, and just people who are smart and guys who have played in the NFL. I mean, they have experience in the world of college athletics. So they would not be a bad movement, but we'll just see what happens. I mean, Greg McGarity's contract doesn't run out until June of 2019, so he's got about 18 months, 17 months from right now. But I think Georgia. I mean, if Greg is not going to be your guy in the future, you need to announce that in this December coming up. I mean, Greg's legacy is that he's will have been that he hired Kirby Smart. That's what people remember. They won't remember the left-footed Mark Richt press conference. They won't remember sort of the lack of vision as it relates to the indoor practice facility, or the lack of vision generally speaking, putting paint over stuff that could be replaced, like Stegman. So, Greg may not be a transformational AD, but that doesn't mean that he won't leave as being successful. I think it's very possible he will be remembered as being successful. We'll just have to see. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here because it sounds like the game is getting halfway interesting. Dean Legge, Dog Post. I will be in Miami. I hope to stream, Tyson Campbell's announcement for the world to see. So we'll see how that goes. Check me out in Miami, and we'll see you next week.